Hello, good evening. Whoops, almost forgot again. Okay. Good evening and welcome. Welcome to my Monday night live stream. I've been doing this now for, probably since about April. So, not too terribly long, but it's going well. I'm super excited to be doing this. I love the different topics that we're getting the chance to discuss, and really more than even that is just the feedback that I'm getting from you guys in real time, and then even those that are sending me something after watching the video later. So I know that that's several of you. You've mentioned to me that you're not going to be able to watch here live on real time in the chat and participate, but you can always watch it later. So happy Monday night. If you guys are in Texas, any of my Texan friends that are watching this, it is the beatdown of August. I'm just going to be really honest that I don't like this month. I'm trying to be as positive as I can possibly be. I mean, this is our night to talk about hope. But I am just really tired of the heat. I don't know when it's going to start getting cooler, but sometimes for those of us that have lived here, we're native Texans, we know sometimes it's not until middle to late October, if you guys can believe that. So we just got to do the best we can to use our skills and get through this time, because the heat affects our mood, right? Some of you will say, oh, well, when it's really cold outside, that's when my mood is affected. Well, I'm one of those that the heat is really what tends to affect my mood in a negative way. So anyway, all that to say, I've got my Hope shirt on. This is my first time wearing this. Let me see if I can show it to you, because you're going to want to see this. Hope is your future is what it says. And it has my program, The Christian Method. So I'm so excited to be wearing this, especially on the night that I get to talk about hope. Hi, Pamela. Thank you. I love it too. I'm really excited. If I could show you guys the back of it, you would see that my symbol for my new brand is, let me see if I can show this easily. Okay, so can you see the cross? And then right here to the side over here is a semicolon, and that is the symbol for mental health. Yay. So both of those worlds coming together, which is what that's what I'm called to do, is to bring those two things together. So hope is your future. If you are watching tonight, or you are going to be watching this at another time, either way, hope is what we are supposed to be. We're the hope of the world, right? The church is the hope of the world. And I like to think about my profession as a therapist is, a good therapist really is supposed to be a hope giver. That's what we need to be doing, is from the minute that they engage with us, we are to be giving them hope that things are going to and can get better. I know that's not how it plays out with everybody, but that's why I chose this topic tonight. I want to talk to you from the perspective of being a therapist, but also being someone who very, very much loves talking about mental health and being honest about talking about mental health. What gets in our way? Why is it so difficult to feel hopeful or to stay hopeful? I have lots of stories I could share about this. Hi, Electra. I'm glad that you're here tonight. I have lots of stories that I can talk about what it's like to try to infuse someone with hope. But I'm going to start by just giving you a quote. This is something that I have used in my therapy practice for many years. I don't even know how I ran across this, but it's such a good quote. And the author of this is Jean Kerr, Kerr. And it goes like this: hope is the feeling that you have is not a permanent one. And I just love that. I think that's exactly the way it is described. That's exactly how it feels, is that when you really feel hope about something, you know that any other feelings that you have are not going to last. They're not going to be with you forever, because let's just face it, any of our feelings are going to be transitory, and even the really good ones, they fade. They go away. Just as quickly as they come in, sometimes they leave. And so as you guys are joining in, I know there was a couple of people last week that said, I like that definition. Oh, yeah, I like that. It's mustard seed manageable. See, sometimes when you guys are putting something in the chat, the little icon of a heart covers up what you're typing. So if you can tell that I'm looking at what is that she's writing, it is because it's manageable and it's really small. It's just this one little nugget that says, if I'm feeling depressed or if I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling moody or whatever that is, my hope is that this is not going to be the way that it always is. And it just isn't. And I choose to look at that in a really positive way that um well, I mean the whole thing is positive, but what I mean is that even the best feelings that we have are not going to last with us forever. So we might as well just be mindful about it. We might as well look for the positive and be mindful about the fact that we are feeling that way in that moment. So, um, I'm going to talk about some of the barriers. And as I'm talking and I'm sharing, whether it's therapy stories or experiences from my own life, I have a lot to say about the topic of hope. As you can tell, it is very much what my entire online program is about. It's about teaching you that hope is within your grasp. But I've realized along the way that there's a few reasons, there's a few barriers that really keep people from experiencing it long term. There might be just this really small nugget of, oh, okay, well, I felt hopeful, but there's something that makes it unsustainable, and that's really what I want to talk about. Yes, I can repeat that. So it's Jean Kerr, and her quote is, "Hope is the feeling you have that the feeling you have is not a permanent one." That's it. I committed that to memory a long time ago, and I've told so many of my therapy patients and individual and group therapy because I think it's a really big conversation for us to have as Christians. Those of us that are followers of Christ need to really look at our relationship with hope a little differently, and so I want to equip you with that as well. But I'm going to be talking about some of the barriers. And as I'm talking about this, I love that the couple of people I have right now that are on the chat, you're asking me questions, you're giving me the thumbs up. I want you to be engaging. Let me know if you have comments about what we're talking about. And if you join us, this is what I was saying earlier. A couple of people told me last week that they tried to join, and I could see that I had more people joining, but they couldn't get on the chat for some reason. So I totally understand that. But if you are someone that just kind of wants to be in the background and not really participate, that's completely fine. But just let us know you're here. Just say hi. I mean, I'm going to recognize you, even if I don't completely know you personally or professionally, I'm going to recognize that you're here. And I think in our early days of doing this, when we have not a ton of people joining, that's important that I can address you and say, hey, you're seen. I'm so glad that you're here. So I imagine that if I have some things to say about hope and I have some examples and stories to give, I imagine that you guys too. If you're following anything about the content that I'm putting here on YouTube, then you probably have a heart for some of these same things. Being a faithful person or a person of faith, and being someone who is trying really hard to manage your mental health in the best way that you can. And hope needs to go along with that. Although I realize in thinking back on the very first time that I ever meet a particular patient, they don't come to me feeling hopeful. It's usually the exact opposite. And it's always been my goal that the very first time they sat down with me, I wanted them to leave differently than they came in. I knew that there's no way we were going to satisfy all of their we're not going to make anything better, really. I mean, that's just being honest. There's no way in a therapy session everything's going to be better, or even one thing is going to be better. But if they can see that down the road things actually have the potential to get better, that they could learn something, then they're going to come back. They're going to come back. And for me, that was always such a huge, huge win, because I knew if I could get them to come back, then we're going to have something we can really work with. Things, I can teach them something. I can show them through the different skills that I know that you don't get these things overnight. You just don't. But it takes a little bit of time, it takes a lot of practice, and it takes maybe, equal amounts of time to get to a place where you look back over your shoulder and realize, "I am not where I was before. This is not how I used to see this. This is not how this used to feel. I feel like a different person. I'm seeing things from a different perspective." And that's what most people are wanting. They might say things like, "Well, I just want that magic pill. I just want my situation to be different." Or I've heard many people say, "Well, I just want this other person in my life to blank," right? I want them to stop what they're doing. I want them to see me differently. I want things to be easier. All of these different things that they're wishing for, but what they really are wanting is, "I just want to feel different than I do right now." And that's what causes people to come into therapy. They don't come when things are great. They don't come because they have nothing better to do. They come because whatever it is that has prompted them to have these hopeless or helpless feelings, they need someone to say, "I got you. I know what to do. I don't know everything, and I can't share everything with you on the very first day, but I know that you're," and this is our obligation as a therapist, is we're hearing what that person is dealing with. We're hearing what they're wanting to come from their situation. And we can look at them in the face and say, "I know how to help you. This is not over my head. This is not out of my scope. I can help you. Things are going to get better." And so, like I said before, that was always the goal, is that someone would leave my office or leave their time with me and say, "I don't know how, but I know that a little bit down the road from now, things are going to be very different in my life. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of muscle. It's going to take time. It's going to take patience. It's going to take devotion. It's going to take boundaries. I'm going to have to put my therapy as a priority in place of maybe things that would be way more fun. I might have to, stay up later, or change my work hours or whatever. In other words, I have to prioritize my needs so that this thing that I want, this feeling better, this less symptomatic feelings, this is going to look different. And it can and it will. And I have so many stories that I could share with you if I had time of the hope that was birthed from someone really putting forth the time and the effort because they realized they were worth that. They may not have thought that in the very beginning, but somehow, by God's goodness, I convinced them that they really not only can get better, but they're worth feeling better. And it happened. If they stuck around, it happened. But I can tell you, I know this is always a hard thing to talk about, but it's also something really important and something I'm always going to make time to discuss. Anytime it fits into, my topic of the night, is that when a person is feeling suicidal, when they're experiencing suicidal thoughts that lead to suicidal feelings of hopelessness and shame and guilt and remorse and all of those things, what they need the most is for someone to do exactly what I just described, for someone to say, "Things are going to get better. I'm going to work with you until they do. I'm going to work right alongside of you, and I will have hope enough for the both of us that things are going to get better, and you are not always going to feel this way." That's my promise to you. And that's a legitimate promise that a therapist can make to someone in their care, is, "I'm going to walk alongside of you until things get better." Whether that's under my care, or maybe that means, and this is something I do, I don't know if everybody does this, but when I have to refer someone to, let's say, another type of therapy, I look at it in the same way. I will tell them, "I'm going to walk alongside of you in this journey until you get into the right care. So I'm not just going to throw 3 referrals at you and say, 'Best of luck.'" I mean, I can do that, but that has never felt right to me. What I would say to them is, "Here are the referrals. Reach out to these people. But if it doesn't go well, or if you need more referrals, come back. Come back and let me know, and I'll produce more," because I take hope so seriously. I know the realities of people experiencing the suicidality that leads to feelings and behaviors. And if you saw one of the more recent videos that I did last week, Let me think of what the title was. It was called The Controversy Around My Loved One May Be Using Panic Attacks to Get Attention. That was a really long title. But that's what I was talking about, is that it's our responsibility to take someone seriously every single time. It's not especially if you're not a professional, it is not your job to assess whether that person is serious, whether that person is, really adamant about what they're saying, or they have the follow through or the means. Your job is to just take what they're telling you seriously on all accounts of mental health, and to get them the support that they need. And so that's how I see that as well. I want to make sure that they are never being left alone in a state where being left alone is going to just enhance the helplessness and the hopelessness. And it's going to feed that idea of nobody really cares. Nobody really cares. I don't really matter. No one's going to either miss me if I'm not here, or really care what happens to me. And I want to dispute that. Even if it's not in a word, I want to dispute that in my action. Okay. So we're about to get into the barriers. I know I only have a couple of people here tonight, and that's okay. No pressure to those of you that are here, but as I'm talking through this, I'm really curious what you think are some of the barriers to actually feeling hopeful and staying hopeful. What do you think that could be? It's kind of a deeper question, honestly, because there's no real surface area of, here's why I don't like feeling hope. It's, when I thought about this, it really is kind of below the surface, because who would admit to not wanting to feel hopeful about a situation or hopeful about this world? I'll talk about that for a second. While you guys are thinking, what gets in your way of feeling and being able to sustain a mindset of hope? Well, let's talk about the fact that anybody watching this is going to agree that anticipating disappointment. Okay, yeah, I'm going to remember that. Anticipating this disappointment. Actually, you were totally right about that. I love your wording, Electra. I love that. And Pamela says, I think that when you're in a deep depression, it's hard to feel anything. Yeah, there's that numbness that people will describe. It's hard to feel anything. It's hard to articulate. Would you agree with that too? It's hard to even articulate what it is that you might be feeling or wanting to feel. Which is why so many times it can lead to a person experiencing true suicidality. Yes. Is they just know, I just don't want to feel like this, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know how to change it. Well, the world that we live in. Okay, I'm not getting too deep into the issues, because that's not tonight's topic at all. Not having the vocabulary to express it, especially during that time, right? Especially during a time when you're really struggling. It's not just that you may not have the vocabulary just in general, but at that moment, we talk about depressive symptoms being like having a foggy brain, memory loss, just feeling kind of out of touch with things. Indecisive is another one. And so you don't have the vocabulary at that moment to be able to say, boom, here's what this is. Here's what I'm experiencing. Now, if you have ever been working with me or working with a therapist that handles things or teaches things in this way, that might be a different story for you, because I am big on helping people to understand their feelings and to know that your feelings matter. And the more you understand what your feelings are outside of a moment of, let's say, depression or anxiety, when you practice that on a regular basis, just like I posted last week, you guys, this is so crazy. Last week, my kids were going back to school, and it was a very, very hectic week on every possible account. But somehow I ended up posting 3 videos. I mean, that is just totally God, right? Because how in the world did I make that happen? There's no other explanation. But I posted a video on how and why to check in with your loved ones. And so if you're watching this now and you did not see that video, please go back and watch that. And if you did watch it, share it with people in your life. Maybe you don't need it. I know some of my patients that watch these videos, You don't need that because I teach this to you all the time and you already get it. But do you have a mom or a dad or a spouse or a best friend that needs to know how to check in with you? Send that video to them. You have to send that to them. You cannot just make this recommendation and say, oh, when you get time, go check this out. This kind of content, talking about two of the most tough and controversial topics, means that we have to put this stuff in front of people's faces over and over and over for them to actually like grab at it and say, okay, yeah, that's for me. This is the time for me. I'm going to look into that. It's not appealing in the way that, people that post all sorts of other things about shopping and makeup and, how to fix this or how to fix that. This is different. This is a different audience. It's an audience that I deeply love and feel so connected and drawn to. But I'm sharing that with you guys that are watching this. Maybe you're watching it easily and naturally, but your loved ones may not be. And so I want to encourage you, put this in front of them, send the link to a specific video to them and say, I need you to watch this so that we can talk about it later. So I just wanted to mention the check-in video. But I kind of got off track of what I was talking about. Let me think about that. I'm going to look at your comments. Not having the vocabulary to express it. Anticipate, the things that get in your way from feeling hopeful. Well, for one of the reasons is, thank you, the barrier to hope. So not having the vocabulary is one, but another one that I was thinking about in preparing for this is maybe someone really doesn't know what does hope even feel like. I mean, if you've dealt with depression for a long period of time, which a lot of my patients have, then they'll say, I don't even think I would recognize that. It's been so long since I've actually like truly felt hopeful about something. I don't know that it would get my attention. That's fair, right? But here's the other side of that. So we do live in this world where things do not look great. It doesn't matter who you are or what age you are or what you believe or what political party you're for. Like, it doesn't matter any of those things. We are in a time period where for many, many reasons, any individual could look at this world and say, things don't look great. And any generation before us has been able to say that. Well, things don't look great. I sure hope the Lord is coming back soon, right? Don't we hear that? Don't we think that? It's true with good reason. But we need to have hope. We need to understand it. We need to know when something is getting in the way of us feeling hopeful. Because as Christians, and this is just looking at it from that view right now, as Christians, we need to be able to understand that we are to see life differently. We are to be able to see that what Jesus brought into the world was absolutely the epitome of hope. When things looked a certain way and everybody, believed that death was a permanent thing, and you have to do all these acts, these behaviors, following the law to the T. Those things might help things look better for you, but there just was no guarantee of heaven. Everybody wants that, but there was no guarantee of that. He brought hope into the world, and then he obviously leaves that through his Spirit in us, that we can carry hope into our situations, into our places of employment, into our families, into situations where we're not even talking about the Lord. We're just coming across as someone that is not of this world, that we've got our mind set on another place, and we believe that we have an RSVP there. Let me look at some of the comments. Pamela is saying, and as Christians, we need to have hope to be able to share hope. Yeah, because we want people to ask us, right? Like, even if you are an introvert and that's just how you're more comfortable, don't you still to some degree want people to ask you, why are you different? Why do you sound positive? Why do you talk the way that you do? Why do you make the decisions the way that you do? That's, like I said just a second ago, that's the Spirit of God dwelling in us. that people are going to recognize, man, I mean, to use the word again, I mean, you vary from other people. You're just different. And some people are going to not like that. Some people are going to have an issue with that, but there's going to be some people that are drawn to that. And they're going to say, I like being around you. I don't know why, but I really like being around you. But here's the things that are not quite as fun or popular to talk about. But here are the hope barriers that I have seen over time. I'm curious what you guys think about this. One of them is I'm unworthy. Now, people that experience this, they're not coming to me and saying this. I can promise you that. They are not, just like what you guys were talking about before in the chat, they're not verbalizing that they think that they're unworthy of feeling better or feeling worthy. But what happens in session, this is what I see, is I am bringing up, worthlessness. Yeah, what they're putting up a wall every time that I am bringing a reason to the conversation of how things are going to get better, what we can do to address that. There's always a but. There's always a, well, you don't know this, or but I've already tried that. And this kind of goes back to one of you guys commented on anticipating disappointment. And I don't know if this is exactly what you meant, but this is how I'm going to address this, or this is how I interpreted it. Is history is factual, right? Sometimes we can just look back on our lives and we can say, well, the last time I was really hopeful, I got let down. I got hurt. Fill in the blank. All of those things are absolutely true. And any of us can attest to that. That we can look back and realize, yeah, things have not always worked out the way that I wanted them to. Why would I feel hopeful about a situation? Why would I think that this is going to work out? Why is this going to get any better now? Can you agree with that? Can you identify with that? I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, but I'm going to share the other one with you. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? So here's what I mean by that. And again, people that are struggling with these two barriers, they are not coming into my office and ever saying this to me. This is just what I am gathering from our conversations. So people that are struggling to find faith, you might know people in your life that this is exactly what you are seeing from them, and you just didn't know how to put words around it. Because I've often asked people, and this might not be in therapeutic environments, but I've asked people before that I can tell they're not believers. They're very skeptical about it. But I might ask them something like, what's your biggest reason for not believing that there's a God? What is your biggest reason for not? It sounds like you really want to. It sounds like you really want to believe that this is possible, that there is a higher power that created all of these things, and that his creation is obvious to us. It looks like you really want that, but why are you resisting of that? And I've had a couple of people actually be able to say, well, but how do I know? How do I ever know that this is actually right? What if I am wrong about this? I did have somebody say that before. What if I'm wrong? And this is why I'm saying this is not the most popular thing to talk about, but I'm going to tell you why we need to be talking about it. Because at the root of what if I'm wrong in many situations, but definitely in this one, is pride. And I'm going to tell you guys, as Christians, we need to get comfortable talking about pride. In therapy, anytime that a person is, I talk a lot about core beliefs. And whenever we get to something that I can tell that, pride is kind of wrapped up into maybe their insecurities, maybe it's wrapped up into something else, it becomes such an uncomfortable conversation the minute I mention that word. But we need to be comfortable talking about that. Why is that? Because everybody deals with it. Everybody deals with pride. And we're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. And we need to be comfortable admitting that we are wrong. We are going to be wrong about things. But you see, this is not an all or nothing. Just because we are wrong and we don't have everything right, it doesn't mean we have nothing right. I mean, how many people do you know, or you yourself, that have ever taken the plunge, taken the leap of faith to believe in um, Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and have really regretted that? How many people do you know? I would say either none or not many. There are some people, I'm not going to open that can of worms tonight, but there are some people that through their life situations, they've decided that they're, going to start looking at that all over again. And they're going to, just open that up and look for problem areas. That's kind of its own thing. But not many people. I don't know anybody that has ever truly regretted that, because what you're saying yes to is you're saying yes to hope. You're saying, yes, there's more to this life than what I'm living right now on earth. There's more available to me. There's more I'm going to experience. This is not it. This is not the perfect, oasis of existence. Pamela, I'm glad. I'm glad that you're someone also that would say none, that you don't know anybody that's ever regretted that. But yet I'm telling you, these are the two things that I see over and over and over whenever I'm talking about anything hope related. It's not even faith-based. It's just talking about getting better. The two barriers that are presented with is in the form of saying I'm unworthy. It might sound like, well, it might come in the form of like a self-sabotage. Again, something that someone is not verbalizing to me, but they are getting in their way over and over from that good thing happening, from feeling better, from taking the right medications, from, trying something new, from gathering a support system. There's so many things. And you guys are probably thinking right now, gosh, she's missing a lot of things. Yeah, I am. Because there's a lot of other things that can be presented as self-sabotage. But the idea is that behind that is this belief of I'm just not valuable. I'm not worthy of feeling good, at least for long periods of time. Because I will see people that get better. The medication worked. Therapy worked. It kind of proved them wrong that they actually were getting better. But then, not a lot of time will go by and they're symptomatic again. And it takes a really keen understanding and a really keen eye to watch that, to not just label it, but to really be careful and methodical about understanding, are we back to the symptomology of all of this again? Is a medication off, or are they struggling with, I'm not really okay with feeling good, and so I'm going to either do something to get in the way of that, or not do something because that's a behavior also, or I'm going to believe, deep in under the surface, I'm going to have this core belief that I'm really not meant to get better and to feel better or to stay better. And so because I think that, I feel that, I do that. Pamela says, sometimes it's hard to be hopeful when you've never felt that before. I completely agree with that. And as I said before, the word that comes to mind for me is recognize. I think it's not just hard to believe it, it's hard to recognize. Is this what hope feels like? And so I'm talking to those of you that may be watching this at any point, realizing that your faith has been the one conduit that opened you up to what hope is like. Maybe it wasn't your mental health. Maybe it wasn't therapy or anything like that. It was realizing that your faith is what has gotten you through really difficult moments that you just were, you hit your knees and it made you, you hit a wall and it made you question everything about life and about, everything, eternity, God, people, friendships, the security that we could find in life. It makes you question everything. And yet through that season, you realize that you ended right back where you started from, which was right in the hands and the arms of God. That he's the only one that can truly provide you with comfort. He's the only one that can really help you get better. He's the only one who can really pick you up when you're down. That's like a good parent, right? That's like a good parent. He's the only one that knows you well enough to know that he loves you and accepts you the way that you are in those tough moments. And he wants to be with you. He wants to comfort you. He wants to say, hey, you're not always going to feel this way. You're not always going to feel this way. So why do we need to be more comfortable in talking about our pride? It is super uncomfortable to admit those things. But do you know, when we are not honest about the times that maybe pride sneaks into an issue and you don't realize what it actually is, it prevents us from understanding forgiveness, from accepting forgiveness, asking for forgiveness. It can prevent us from being able to accept compliments. It can prevent us from giving God credit when he really is the only one who deserves credit for anything great about us, because he's given us everything. Anything that we are grateful for, anything good about us, he has been the one to give that to us. There's just so many things that are a result of not being comfortable with realizing I don't have it all together. I don't do it all well. I'm not great at everything. I make mistakes constantly, and I could be wrong. I am wrong. But that's where the CBT in me comes out and says, look at the evidence. Look at the facts. Don't just go by your thoughts and don't just go by your feelings. It's important to line them up with reality. And in this case, and on this channel, we're trying to line up our thoughts with God's reality, with his truth that cannot be disputed and doesn't need to be disputed. So I hope that that's making sense. I know those of you that are really comfortable with therapy, and maybe you've already kind of thought through this before, it may not be as difficult of a pill to swallow. But for some of you, you might be thinking, well, what in the world? I want you to think about that for a minute. Think about the people that you've ever tried to share hope with. And you can tell that it's almost just palatable. You can tell that when you're talking to someone about God, you're talking to them about understanding salvation and truly accepting that the gospel is true and it's for them. There's so much resistance. And a lot of times that resistance it's verbalized in, I don't want to be wrong. Are you seeing that now? I don't want to be wrong. It's just a different way to kind of camouflage what I just said, that we deal with pride issues. Because in order to really receive all the things about God, we absolutely have to realize all the things about us, all the things that are causing and presenting a need for him. Right? Can you see that it just empties out all of these, egotistical things about us and causes us to say, I am hopeless without you, God. I don't stand a chance. I might have good moments. There might be some positive, and there's some great victories that happen just in our own humanity. But I'm talking about the big picture. I'm talking about the macro view of this, not just these, small moments, these small victories that we have. But we don't stand a chance for eternity without knowing him and without understanding who he is, what he came to do, how he loves us, how he's for us, all of those amazing things. Pamela is saying, I'm really learning that right now, truth versus feelings. I'm going to say this because, Pamela, I know you're not the only one that needs to hear this or be encouraged by this. That can be a lifelong journey. It doesn't mean that you are never going to have any traction at all. I do not believe that for a second. But trying to understand the truth versus your feelings, I definitely have some videos on that. So go back and check that out. My whole conversation about, why we don't trust our feelings and why they don't need to be the authority is a big conversation, but we need to start that early. We need to get that in our minds. When I say early, I don't mean just children, although I am talking about children. I mean, we need to start that as soon as we possibly can so that it really has a chance to take root in our lives and we can catch it so much earlier. That rather than thinking, I don't feel this way, or I do feel this way. We always lean those, or we measure those feelings up against the facts. What am I thinking about this, or what are the actual facts about this? And it can change the whole game when you realize that you may not feel something, but that doesn't make it untrue. Okay, so I'm going to be paying attention to anything that you guys are posting. I see we have a couple more people that have joined. So if you're able to, tell us who you are, tell us that you're with us. I'd love to acknowledge you. I just want to tell you a couple of hopeful stories. Okay, that's how I want to spend the rest of our time, aside from any questions that you guys might ask. I love my job. And I know if you've watched anything, if you don't know me already and you're just watching any of these videos for the first time, you don't know me. I get that. But you probably have heard me talk about why I love my job so much. And it is because of this reason. If I'm doing a really great job, if I'm really working along with the Lord in what I'm supposed to be doing, not only do I feel hopeful, and it's very genuine, but I'm able to infuse that into other people, and that they can walk away with kind of an extra, I can't think of what the phrase is, but anyway, they just walk away feeling like an extra pep in their step. Like, whew. And that's why many people will leave therapy, all over. Not just me. They'll leave therapy in general and say, wow, nothing happened, but I just feel better. Sometimes it is just the act of taking a step towards something that you've needed for a long time. And that's enough. And that's what I'm saying is that's hope right there. That's how you need to recognize it, is that it's this glimmer of a ray of light, that there's a tunnel, but you can see light at the end of that. And you can realize, okay, so I'm trusting this process. I'm trusting this person that is going to be treating me, that they've done this long enough, that they know how to guide me. This isn't just up to me anymore. I don't have to be the only one to figure this out. I don't have to be the one to know exactly what to do, or how to handle a crisis, or how to talk to my loved ones when I just want to throw in the towel because they don't listen anyway. I love my job for those reasons and so many more. But I especially love when I'm able to either, get close. It happens at various times in therapy. Sometimes it happens when, I'm getting ready to transition someone out of therapy. They're getting ready to graduate. And we talk about, how things started and all the growth that they've experienced. That's a really, really awesome day. But it also just happens along the way when a person, is able to, or their team rather, is able to bring them through a crisis. And I love having that moment where, maybe they were checking in with me as, suicidal or hopeless. My mouth is really dry tonight. Goodness. So their team was able to bring them through that episode. And then our next session in therapy, we're able to talk about remember when things were like that. And now look at how things are for you. And it just proves that when you do the right things, when you follow the treatment plan and you've got the treatment goals in mind, things absolutely can get better. And yes, there was a role that I played in checking in with them, supporting them, educating them. But I promise you, aside from all the amazing, miraculous things that I know God is always working in and around us constantly, I'm really careful to give my patient the credit, because they're the ones that have to leave the therapy session and go do the work. They're the ones that have to take the steps, make the choices, follow through. I want to see the comments here. Pamela says, you probably love your job so much because you're good at it and it's obvious that God is using you. Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that, Pamela. I'm going to focus on that second thing that you said. It is obvious that God is using me, and that's what makes me good at my job. I've just learned a lot, so much over the years, that I can do therapy one way when it's just me relying on me. And I know what that produces. But when I'm asking the Lord to, number one, bring me the people I'm supposed to be treating, Help me to see them the way that I'm supposed to see them. Say the things I need to say. And that can be really encouraging, wonderful, powerful, empowering things. And it can also be really tough things. I always pray that when I do, not always, when I pray for those things, I just have better results. But it's always him. Having a cheerleader when it all clicks and an advocate when you're struggling. Yeah. Those are fun sessions. They are wonderful sessions when I get to be the cheerleader and say, "Yeah, you're really getting it. This is exactly what we've talked about, and now you're living it. And now you're seeing that this skill set works. This philosophy works." Taking that medicine that you didn't want to take, that you tried to take yourself off of, it works, right? I heard before, because I used to work really closely with someone in my earlier days as a therapist that was really connected to like the recovery, the substance abuse recovery community. And he would always say, it works when you work it. And he would tell all of his patients that. And I just thought, that's not just in his realm with substance abuse. That's over here with psych. It works when you work it. But if you do, and that's what I've told people before in our very first session, I promise you that that your issue, if it falls within my scope, I absolutely put my word on the fact that I can promise you you're going to get better if you keep doing this. If you don't ever come back, or if you stop before things get good, I don't have any responsibility for that. I can't own that. But if you show up and you consistently do the work that we talk about, you are going to get better. And I absolutely guarantee that. I didn't know that in the beginning. I didn't know the power of me being able to say that to someone, because let's face it, I had to build years of actually seeing that that was true. I wanted it to be true, but I actually saw it over and over and over. I never really understood how little I heard that someone is proud of me until my therapist started doing. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you've had that experience. Everybody needs to hear someone say to them that I'm proud of you and that I see that you're working hard and that I'm acknowledging that this is not an easy thing for you. That's validation. And we never get too old for that. We never grow out of it as like we don't even need it. And I just think about many, many times the traits about Jesus that I've always loved, but I'm growing more and more in my faith to love so much more, are when he validates us. When he finds a way to say something like, I see you. I know this was really difficult for you, and you did it anyway. You didn't feel courageous, but yet you picked up the slingshot and you did it anyway. I know that he doesn't always, you have to be really, really, you have to really look for it, but it's in scripture. It's absolutely there that he can validate us like nobody else can. And as a therapist, if I'm taking that one trait that I love about him so much and bringing it into my work with my patients, I'm so happy at the end of my days, because I know how much I need that as a human. I know that I need that, and I know that other people do. And when you work really, really hard, you need to have someone that is saying, it's not just your imagination. You are getting better. Things are different for you. When you tried setting boundaries, it looks like it really worked. You have a lot to be proud of. But I have had stories. Let me get back to the stories for a second, because this might be all we have time for tonight. And I have loved just the few of you guys that have been here and are communicating. See, it just makes it so much more fun. I have had people start therapy that this is probably the most powerful example, although it may not be the very best example, because, I've been doing this for 16 years. There's a lot of people I've treated. But some of my favorite stories to tell are those that when they first came in to see me, to say hopeless doesn't even give it justice. They literally were like, this is my last effort. I've tried this before. I've tried the medication before, but something told me to try this again. Or maybe someone, there's a couple of times in my life where I worked for a larger psychiatric office, and one of the psychiatrists might have referred that person to me and said, I think she might be a good fit for you. And so they'll come in and say, Dr. So and so referred me to you and they think that you're a good fit for me. And so, here I am. Let's do this. So on day 1, day 2, day 3, those early weeks and months and maybe even years, they could not see that there was ever going to be a day that they would not be suicidal because they've just experienced it so much for so long that it has just become a standard. They just live with such a pit of hopelessness in their spirit. And sometimes these people are believers, right? That's why I tell you all the time there is no shame at all. There never needs to be shame, but there does not need to be any shame at all in being a Christian who struggles with mental health. Because although those two things do fit together and they can help one another out, they can be awfully confusing. And it really takes a guide to help you unpack those things and work through it. But some of my favorite stories are those that early on they would not ever guess that there was going to come a time that they didn't check in with a really low number, or they didn't say that, from one week to the next that they didn't have any suicidal thoughts. But then they get to a point in our work together where they say, you know what? That hasn't happened in a long time. And it wasn't a magic pill, and it wasn't anything that I did. It wasn't one thing that I did. It may have been several things that I shared with them, but I'll tell you, my secret sauce and the whole reason why I created an online program that has so much of what I share with you here on Mondays all wrapped up into one package is because I know that this works. And I know what it takes for someone to change their thinking to such a degree where suicidality does not happen. If it does happen, it's very fleeting. I can teach you to recognize that, to call it what it is, to maybe even call who is responsible for that, call them out, but then you're able to change that around. Okay, Joanne, I'm glad you're here. Yes, of course, you can always watch the beginning of this, but I'm glad that you're here. I did see a couple of others joining us. I'm thrilled by that. This is a really important conversation. So no matter where you're joining us, or this is going to be a good one to rewatch again. But those are some of my favorite victories where people had, before working with me or before doing therapy long term, they were just used to being hospitalized, every 6 months or every year. And I took the time, I was patient. I gave them everything I had. I taught them every good thing I ever knew would work. And eventually, because of their diligence and their patience and their tenacity to do the work, they would have that conversation with me where we both acknowledged, gosh, it's been a long time. It's been a long time since you've had to be hospitalized, since you called me in a crisis and said, I think we need to go over my crisis plan again, or I think we need to, discuss this with my loved ones. And I want you very, very clearly and carefully to hear what I'm saying, because this is big. I'm not saying that if you experience suicidality, that something is wrong with you, that you're not doing the work, that you're just not following the steps. That is not my message. Sometimes, biologically, chemically speaking, it is just going to happen. There are certain diagnoses that it just happens. What I'm telling you is that in all of my time so far from being a therapist, and I've worked with some really tough cases, some really tough diagnoses, that when you get to the root of your thinking, you absolutely are changing the behaviors, because you're changing, here's the sequence. You're changing your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, and then the things that your body manifests, the sensations, the symptoms. You're changing all of those things by getting to the root of it. You see, suicidality can be organic, but it's not so organic that we have no idea where it's coming from or no idea how to change it. Because I'm just sitting here in front of you tonight telling you, I have not yet encountered a patient that I did not know how to help them with their suicidality. Now, it wasn't just me that helped get them through that. Many times I've had to refer somebody to an inpatient stay, and that's exactly what they needed. It was exactly the right time because the medications were looked at, time away from their life and their stressors, all of those things culminated together and they got better. Yes, that's true. I'm also telling you that was avoiding the crisis but they still had a ton of work to do when they got back home with me. Week after week, maybe a couple of times a week, we would talk about how can we address the actual thoughts that entertain this longer than just those fleeting moments I talked about. Have you ever heard me say this before? If you've ever watched when I've talked about this before, that everybody experiences suicidality. Did you know that? Everybody does. But it's just not always to the same degree of I cannot do this, I will not do this, and I'm willing to do something about it. I cannot be in this much pain anymore. I don't know any way out of this, so this is what I'm planning to do. That's serious, right? That's crisis talk. Some people, their suicidality will sound like, I cannot do this. I cannot figure this out. I can't take this anymore. And to a much lesser degree, that is still suicidality, because what you're saying is, I give up. Maybe that means I'm giving up on a relationship. Maybe that means I'm giving up on a prospect. Maybe I'm giving up on my weight loss journey. Maybe I'm giving up on my health. Maybe I'm giving up on education. I mean, the list goes on, right? So the consequences clearly are not as great, but I want you guys, and I know this is going a little bit deeper than maybe some of you might have intended on a night called Hope, but with hope, with the conversation of hope, we also have to look at, like I said, the barriers keeping us from that, and Satan is absolutely one of those. He does not want you to stay in a place of hope where your eyes are on eternity. He came to steal, to kill, and destroy. What is he destroying? Your hope. He doesn't want you to look up and to see that God is always going to provide a way through your temptation, through your difficulty, through your wrong thinking. Jesus is the one standing there on the boat with the raft, throwing it out to you, saying, just grab on. I'm going to pull you in. I know what to do. Don't worry, you don't. I do. But that's not the voice that people that are dealing with depression hear. They hear a very, very different voice, and we need to be able to recognize it. Even when we're struggling, even when we're depressed, even when we're super anxious, we need to know God's voice sounds one way and the enemy's voice sounds another. He's going to cause you to doubt. He's going to cause you to feel very depressed about your life. He's going to cause you to feel discouragement. He's going to distract you in very unhealthy ways. But God's voice is absolutely not. He's saying, look to my word. If Jesus himself fought off the idea of temptation with scripture, isn't that to be our same weapon? Hi, Believer 72. I'm glad you're here. See, I usually have people that are I might even change the time, because I always have people that kind of halfway through, I'm getting more people jumping on. Okay, we're almost at the end of our time, but I wanted to share, in sharing those stories with you, I hope you know that's not just one person. That's like a theme in telling you that I have had the privilege and the honor in my career so far of many stories that look just like that, where they never thought it was possible, and then yet one day it was, and they were prompted by me to look at that, to look over their shoulder and realize, wow, I haven't had a suicidal thought lasting. I haven't, gone through that. I haven't gone through the scheme in my mind of, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I can't fight this off anymore. So this is what I'm going to do. I am grateful beyond words that through God's power in me and working in the lives of my patients, that they've been able to say, I actually feel hope. I recognize it, and it's lasting. Because do you know that just like you can feel joy on a day where you're not, gleeful or giddy or, smiling like crazy, you can also feel hope in your heart, in your spirit, even when life around you does not look great. Just like I said at the beginning of this world as we know it right now does not feel very hopeful. But Jesus promised us that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and that he came and he overcame this world. He overcame it. So we have the ability, just in that promise, just in that declaration, to say, this isn't all there is. I don't know when the end is going to come. I don't know what that's going to look like. You know, the Bible says definitely not ever going to know that, but we know who does. And the best way that we're going to have hope and hang on to it is by hanging on to the one that is hope. The one that can make promises and fulfill them perfectly every time. He doesn't mess up. He doesn't get it wrong. We do. So I hope that one of your big takeaways from tonight is that you will, the phrase that we use in therapy a lot is get out of your own way. You want to feel hope, you need to feel hope, and you deserve to feel hope. So step out of the way. If there is something that you are allowing in front of you, maybe it's that thought of I'm unworthy. You know what? Let's just face that too. We are unworthy. We are not worthy. There is only one who is, and it is not us. It is Jesus. He's the only one that is worthy. So radically accept that. Raise your hands in the air and thank God. I'm not worthy, and I love it. I absolutely love it because I know that I'm depending on the one who clothes me in his righteousness and presents me to God in a way that says, she's not worthy, but she sure is worth it. And I want that for you. If you're thinking, what if I'm wrong? You're wrong about a lot of things. So am I. But if you're putting your hope and your trust in the Lord Jesus Christ, you're not wrong. You just have to read. Don't take my word for it. Read the scriptures. Read how it's proven over and over that as Jesus was prophesied about in the Old Testament, all of those things came to pass. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. The God, I'm not going to say the God, there's only one God. God of the Old Testament, God of the New Testament, total integrity. Everything he said he was going to do, he did. And if he says he's coming again, he's coming again. If he says that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one else can come to the Father except through him, he's right. Let's let him tell us who he is. Let's not doubt that anymore. Let's not let our pride get in the way of keeping us from what we are, what is rightfully ours as an heir of God, a child of God when you accept him. I have loved talking about hope with you guys tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you in advance, because I know some of you guys will go back and watch this later. And remember what I said. On average, when we're talking about mental health conversations, it takes I would say between 7 and 9 times for someone to hear a message or see something come across their social media before they grab at it and listen to it or watch it. Don't lose hope. Remember, hope is your future. I have a lot more to say about this topic. So if you are listening to this and you're wondering, what is the Christian method? What is she talking about when she's referring to that there's so much more than what she's imparting to us on Monday? Please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to talk to you and let you know if this is a fit for you. It may not be. It's not for everybody, or at least not at the same time. But I want you to get better. I want to infuse hope in your life. I know how to do it. I don't want you to experience suicidality anymore. It breaks my heart that anyone ever does. But I want you to recognize the voice if that comes to you. And let's all aim for that to be a fleeting experience. That just like Jesus in the desert, he knew he was vulnerable, he was weak, he had all of the things going on that would cause him to just want to give in. But he recognized what that was, and he called him out, and he used God's word to do so. Let's do the same. Thank you guys for being here. I'm going to pray for us, and then I'll see you. Actually, I may not see you next week. I think next Monday is Labor Day. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. So, because it's the end of August. Lord God, thank you for this evening. Thank you for tough topics. Thank you for courageous people that tune in on Monday nights or watch this later to listen to what you have to say through me about being the hope of the world. You truly are the hope of the world, but because you live in us, we have an opportunity to show that, to live that, to make it available to other people. This is a very dark world that we are living in so many ways, and it's very easy to think that things are never going to get better. But because of you, because the fact that you are ultimately always the one in charge, and because you are still working and performing great acts and miracles and mercies and kindnesses in our lives every day, we have so much to be hopeful about. You promised us eternity if we put our hope and trust in you. And God, I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful that we get to talk about mental health and faith coming together, something that I know is so your heart. If anybody is listening to this or watching this and they are struggling with any of the things that I've talked about, may they reach out to me. May they reach out to someone in their lives that can get them the help that they need immediately. No one, no one needs to struggle to that degree. God, you are the author of life and you're the author of death. You're the one who decides how many days that we have on this earth. And anything that would ever come to us saying otherwise is not of you, God. And I just speak that over these precious people that are here tonight and watching this. We are grateful for you. We're grateful for your word. And I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you guys so much for being here. I hope to see you in a couple of weeks and have a great rest of your week. Bye.